Welcome to this special session, a roundtable with the L'Oréal UNESCO for Women in Science program, the distinguished. I'm very pleased to welcome all of you and all of the distinguished scientists here at WIPO. I'm Kaori Saito, Gender and Diversity Specialist at WIPO, co-organizer of this training course together with the Academy, representing the Human Resources Management Department here. And also I have the privilege of moderating this roundtable discussion. For more than 20 years, the L'Oréal Foundation and Unesco have recognized outstanding women scientists. And this morning we heard from the UNESCO representative that they have honored and awarded 107 laureates for their For Women in Science program and award. And some of these award winners then went on to receive, for example, the Nobel Prize for their respective fields. And this is a very well-known prize award around the world. And we are here today with one laureate from the Latin America and also 6 young scientists who are from around the world who won the International Rising Talents. We have the partnership with the L'Oréal UNESCO Foundation from last year in 2018 with a hope that we could also contribute to empowering these talented women scientists with the knowledge of intellectual property. Our latest statistics from WIPO in the international patenting system, and those of you who know its patent cooperation treaty, the stats show that among all inventors who file patents internationally with WIPO in the international patent system, only 17% of those inventors are women, and that's for the 2018 statistics. So one good news is that the number is increasing. We have doubled the figure for in the last decades. But on the other side, it is also clear that there is a significant gender gap in international patenting. And organizing this training course is part of the organizational efforts for WIPO to promote women in innovation and creativity around the world. Now, this year, so I just mentioned that 7 scientists, 1 laureate and 6 international rising talents have expressed interest in deepening their intellectual property knowledge with us by coming to Geneva. And we're very privileged to have them here. And also, we are thrilled to hear that their amazing journeys that they have taken to date. And I'm really thrilled that we can hear your stories here with us. In the audience, we mostly have WIPO staff members, and we also have a few colleagues from agencies in other UN entities and also other international organizations based in Geneva. So welcome to these colleagues. In a moment, I'll ask the laureate and also the international rising talents to share what they do in 2 or 3 minutes and in a way that us non-scientists would understand. So I'll ask each first laureate and each of the international rising talents to share with us what they do in, again, 2-3 minutes. And then after we've done that, we would like to open the floor for question and answer.
Thank you very much.
So, Professor Hallberg.
To understand the basic properties of these materials. So what is new phenomena, how do electrons work, if we can find new properties that could be used for quantum computers or for information technology, for example, at the electronic level. So we get a material, we modelize the material, and then we develop numerical codes, and this was recognized internationally because they're very precise numerical codes, techniques to understand electronic behavior, for example, or magnetism and these materials. So the laws of nature that are important to consider, which govern at that microscopic level, atomic level, is quantum mechanics. So we are modeling these materials with quantum mechanical theory, and to try to see if, to try to understand, as I said, the behavior. So potentially, we hope this could be used in the future, but we are pushing the limits of knowledge. I like to do a parallelism with the discovery of semiconductors 100 years ago, where semiconductors where the property of semiconductors were discovered, and this 40 years later enabled the development of the transistor and of microchips and integrated circuits. What the semiconductors are based on quantum physics. I think the future of technology in most cases is based on the quantum properties of materials. And we hope to be contributing to that. So very briefly, one other passion I have and interest is the social responsibility of scientists. And I work in the Pugwash Conferences for Science and World Affairs. This institution was created by Albert Einstein and Bertrand Russell in 1957 when the hydrogen atomic bomb was developed and tested. So I joined this movement because I think it's very relevant for scientists also to join and to get involved in discussions that have to do with the social responsibility of scientists and with applications of scientific discovery. So it has to do with artificial intelligence now, with nanotechnology and genetics, genetic manipulation. So there's a lot to do with technology is evolving very fast, much faster than our ethical considerations and much faster than the maturity of a human being. So we have to really be scientists have to be involved and convinced in a responsible way of applying technological developments. So, I can get questions whenever you like. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Hallberg. Now I would like to invite Dr. Nurcan Tunçbag to share with us.
My name is Nurcan Tunçbag. I am from Turkey, from Middle East Technical University. I am mainly working on, my field is bioinformatics. It's an interdisciplinary field, combines biology, medicine, statistics, computer science, and engineering in an interdisciplinary field. My main focus is developing computational techniques to model what happens within the cell and within the disease condition. Especially, I am working on in cancer, and the aim is what is different compared to the normal cell when we analyze computationally the cancer cells. And it's a type of reverse engineering. We have the output, that the disease cell, and we have patient-derived big data, and we try to reverse engineer to come up with a signaling pipeline that we can target with some drugs. So this is towards the personalized medicine and to suggest personalized therapeutic strategies by using these computational methods.
It's a great pleasure to be here and to share this 1 hour and a half with you. So basically, I'm group leader, junior group leader at the Josep Carreras Leukemia Research Center in Barcelona. So I'm Spanish. Basically, my group is focused on studying the three-dimensional chromatin organization. So let's start from the beginning. So I'm a molecular biologist. So if we take, so almost all cells in our body has 2 meters of DNA. So if we take the DNA, that is the material that contains all the instruction for the cell, and we put it is 2 meters length. And this DNA is packed in a nucleus that is really very tiny, and in the manner that is packed in the 3D dimension is not random. It's cell type specific, and it's changed according to different signaling of stress or wherever that the cell can feel it, right? And also the organization is altered in different diseases. My group is mainly focused right now in a project that is focusing acute lymphoblastic leukemia affecting children. So acute lymphoblastic leukemia, also called EAL, the pediatric one is the most common pediatric cancer, right? And although during the previous years we have moved quite a lot in the improvement of the treatment of these diseases, around 20% of kids that are diagnosed die in the first 5 years after the diagnosis. So this is a big drama, and highlight the needs to improve the treatment of these 20% of kids. So during the previous years, we have reported an amazing and complex data about the mutation that are basically mistakes affecting the DNA that is associated with the development of this leukemia. But around 95% of these are not affecting genes. And genes are like the pieces of information, the instruction that the cells need to use or not use in order to work and to be a given cell type. So basically, one cell that's gonna be a lymphocyte, that's gonna be part of the immune system, is different from a cell that's gonna be part of the heart. So basically, what makes a cell to be a specific cell type basically is which genes, which pieces of information the cell use. So, as I said before, around 95% of mutations, these mistakes, are not affecting genes. And now we know that what these mutations are affecting are the regulatory elements that are like switch that decided which genes are gonna be used or not. So basically which genes are gonna switch on or switch off. But the problem now is that we don't know which are the regulatory elements, the switch that control each gene in each cell type, because as I said before, this is cell type specific. So basically, during my postdoc, I developed a new method that allows for the first time to know which are the switch that control each gene in each cell type. And now we are able to use all the genetic information that has been generated during the last decade, and we can start understanding these 95% of mutations that are affecting the switch. And basically, by integrating this data, now we are describing new genes that are potentially regulated, associated with the disease, with this acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and having this new information about these new genes associated with diseases, we are able in the future, other people, other groups, will be able to use this information to produce new treatment to target these new genes.
I'm Priscilla, I'm from Ghana in West Africa. My research is in the area of neuroscience. So basically, I'm interested in developing new drug options for resistant epilepsy and then neurocystic psychosis. I'm sure everybody here has an idea of what epilepsy is. So it's just a condition that's characterized by seizures that come about when you have a disorder in electrical activity in the brain. So I try to find new treatment options for epilepsy, simply because for every population of epilepsy patients that we have, you are always going to have about 30% of them that will be non-responsive to the drugs that we currently have. And I focus on very severe types of epilepsy like Dravet syndrome. So I approach my drug discovery from the point of traditional medicine, because in Africa, a majority of our people rely on traditional medicine. And even though people have reservations about it, it's not something we can just ignore and hope it goes away. But we can decide to approach it from helping them safely apply what is available to them. So I work a lot with the traditional medical practitioners, and then I try and look at their therapies and then try to put some science to it to first and foremost determine whether or not their claims are true. And if there is success, then I take it up a notch. So, for instance, look at how the isolated parts of the medicine will work. So I isolate compounds. So I do a lot of chemistry, and then try and determine specifically how it's acting. So, for instance, one of the very common things I'll do is determine how it interacts with ion channels, because ion channels are very important in excitation of cells, for instance, in the neurons. And then I would also look at how I could adequately formulate it so that you have efficient delivery into the brain. So currently I'm working on developing a treatment for neurocystic psychosis where I'm applying nanotechnology. Sorry.
I am Zahra Douafli from Tunisia. I'm a neuroscientist and exactly from the Biotechnology Center of Boursadria in Tunis. Now I'm working on neurodegenerative disease and especially Alzheimer's disease. So my project is about a larger scale extraction and purification of a new molecule which has a potent anti-Alzheimer disease effect. So my project will focus at 4 levels. So the larger scale extraction and purification of this molecule, the optimizing its passage through the blood-brain barrier, and I will see how I encapsulate this molecule for preserving its bioactivity, stability, and bioavailability. And finally, I will see the effect of this molecule on transgenic Alzheimer's disease mouse model. So this, in general, nowadays, the most accepted hypothesis, not just for Alzheimer's disease, but all neurodegenerative disease, is related to the aggregate misfolding, the conformation change, the aggregation of some peptides. In the case of Alzheimer's disease, we have the aggregation and misfolding of A-beta and the formation of amyloid plaques in brain tissue. This nowadays, we don't speak about acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, but we speak about inhibitors of this misfolding and aggregation, which happen at age of 13, 35. But after that, we will see the symptom of Alzheimer at 16 or 17 years old. So my project will focus on this, on Alzheimer's disease and how to cure this disease. Because nowadays there is no diagnosis, no effective treatments available for this disease. Not just Alzheimer, but for all the neurodegenerative disease.
My name is Minna Tallah Serafi. I work at Center for Genomics at Zuweil City of Science and Technology in Egypt. And actually, I did my bachelor in Egypt, and then I did the master's and PhD in Heidelberg University in Germany, where I learned how to use yeast as a model organism in research. And we were studying cell division at that time. But then when I moved back home, I established the yeast research in our center. And actually, why yeast? So we use baker's yeast, the ones we use for baking. And why so? Because they share almost like 30% of the genes with the humans. And therefore, you can really study the gene in the yeast and then understand what it does and move to the cell culture or the human cells where you can confirm your findings. So what we do, we study DNA repair. First, the preliminary data is done on yeast. And then when we have solid confirmation of the findings, we move to mammalian cells. and then we start to check if it does the same job in the human cells. And this then helps you understand the function of a novel gene in DNA repair, and then you can predict what kind of mutations can happen in this gene and what kind of consequences in the cell could happen. And then you can suspect what kind of diseases could have these mutations. So now we are in the process of confirming the findings in both yeast and mammalian cells or human cell lines, and then we will later move into patients' samples that we suspect to have mutations in these genes, and we will screen them, because then you can understand the cause behind the disease, and this will help a lot in the diagnosis, and then also pave roads for personalized medicine, because in the future, like, doctors cannot just tell the patient to take a drug based on the symptoms, but rather the genetic makeup or what's exactly messed up in the cell. So we hope that we can reach this stage. So it's a very long process from yeast to patient samples. Yeah.
So I'm Mika Nomoto from Japan. So last year I got a PhD, and now I'm working at Nagoya University in Japan. So my field is plant pathology. So I focused on plant protein mechanism. So immune response is regulated by protein. So then how plant induce plant immunity against pathogen and insect injured. So I found the regulator protein. So now I'm performing the chemical screening to identify to regulate plant immunity. So I think our research will be able to contribute the supply of food. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the fascinating areas of research that we have just at this table is amazing. And so now I would like to then move to the question and answer session. And as a moderator, well, I have lots of questions that I would like to ask. So I'll take the privilege of the moderator and ask the first question. So my question is, how old were you when you first noticed that you are interested in science? And I would like to start from the Professor Hallberg.
I think I must have been 2 years old. I mean, I think it's a process. I think all children are curious, and they're all potential scientists and technologists, I would say. But I say, let's talk about science and interest in nature. That would be my quick answer.
Okay. That was very fast. And how old were you then that you wanted to make science, well, in your case, physics, as your profession?
Well, when I was in high school, I liked genetics, I liked engineering, I liked mathematics, I liked physics. I liked studying. I liked to know how the world, how nature functions. So more or less, I knew I wanted to do that. But then, of course, young people, they don't really know what these professions are about, because what we do is, I don't know if you agree, but it's completely different to what we learn in high school. So I think it's so important to have good teachers and good professors, and I think I was lucky because I had a couple of very good mentors at school. So I think high school is a pivotal moment in deciding what career to follow, of course. But this comes from childhood and from family support and stimulation. So this is how I felt. It could be sort of sound obvious, but I think it has to be reinforced and mentioned all the time, because of family support, and in particular for young women, it's very important to include them with toys, with everyday life, to instill self-esteem in them, to know that if we could do it, any young woman with interest and is passionate about science can do it, of course. So this is my message, and this is what I felt when I started with my career, and well.
Thank you so much, Professor Hallberg. May I move to Dr. Thunberg, I'm not pronouncing your last name correctly.
That's just fine. Nobody can pronounce it. It's a bit complicated because we have a different letter in Turkish.
Yes.
So it's
Thunberg.
Yeah.
Dr. Thunberg.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I am also agreeing with Professor Hallberg. With young ages, we start thinking about the science, and I was also very curious about the things. But as a profession, I had determined during my high school that the only way for me is to study engineering. But I was also very curious about the biological systems. And during my master's and PhD studies, I have started with the bioinformatics field. And that was perfectly matching with my focus, that I would like to apply engineering principles into the biological systems. So that's my short story about my profession.
Simply, I like plant. So because I grew up a tiny town, surrounded by rich nature. So then, in high school, I enjoyed studying biology. So then I entered the university, and then I knew a plant have immune response like a human. So then I decided to study this field. That's it.
In fact, I have always had an interest on science, and specifically on biological science. But when I started my master's degree in Faculty of Medicine in Sherbrooke in Canada, I noticed that I have an interest specifically on neurodegenerative disease. It was 8 years ago.
And would you like to share briefly why you are interested in the neurodegenerative diseases?
Why neurodegenerative disease? Because it's very important to work nowadays on neurodegenerative disease, Parkinson, Alzheimer, diabetes type 2, because this disease will be the equivalent of cancer disease in 2020. So it's a very interesting field. Mm-hmm. And because I work on a specific hypothesis, which is new in North America or in Europe, and it's very interesting. I want to explore something new. So.
Interestingly, I didn't always want to be a scientist. Actually, when I was going into high school, I actually wanted to be the president of the World Bank. Because I saw the president of the World Bank on television, and I thought that was a cool job. So that's what I wanted to do. So I actually went into high school with the aim to become the president of the World Bank. So I thought if I knew economics and I knew French, then I'll become the president. So I went and studied economics and French and math and geography. But after some time in that class, I was actually bored. And so I asked to be switched over to the science class. So I went in quite some time behind my colleagues, and I had to quickly catch up. But then after my first chemistry test, I made 100%, and I knew I was home. And then I stuck with science from that point. My interest in neuroscience, however, came about after my bachelor's. I came across my PhD supervisor, who had this great vision for developing neuroscience research in Africa. And I like challenges, and I liked that he had a grand plan. So I decided to go along with him. But my interest in epilepsy came about from interacting from some epilepsy patients, and to think that people have to live with this disease without no guarantee of a cure was a challenge to me to actually work towards making their lives better.
We were all surprised to hear potential the World Bank president. But yes, but true. I think we are, for the world, we are quite glad that you are also this outstanding scientist.
So basically, I have been, I think that all my life interested in science at different levels, right? And it has been completely biased because my father was teacher. Basically, when I finished school, because my mother was working, I spent time with my daddy at the laboratory of the school. So of course, that you are completely biased because he loved to prepare all the collection of insects or plants or wherever. So I helped him. Okay, so yeah, it was quite driving in this direction. I think that I had like a crisis as during my high school. I didn't like it to study a lot. So basically, I was just trying to prepare the test the very first minute, and I also loved run. So I was an athlete, and I was doing proper running. And at some point, I thought, okay, I'm gonna just be focused on running. But luckily, I didn't do it because I was really risky of have a lesion forever and just failing also in this career. So I decided to study biology because it was what I really liked it, right? And I think that there is a key point in my life in which I realized how one human being can be created just from one sperm and one ovule. That's amazing. 2 different cells give rise an individual, a human, and it's the same for every human or every animal or any life things. So basically, this was really very inspiring me, and I decided to, as I say, I started to study biology at the university. It's when I really understood what was to enjoy studying. So basically, all things that I didn't study, I just started studying in the university. And it was really very inspiring. And on top of this, I decided to also to study biochemistry at the same time because I really wanted to learn more things, right? And at the end of my university, I just wanted to be at the bench at the laboratory. So I decided to go for a PhD, and because of personal experience, I decided to go for cancer. So I think that almost everybody have a relative or friends who suffer for this. So I decided to study cancer under the epigenetic point of view. And at the end of my PhD, I say, okay, let's go for a postdoc. And I don't want to do the same thing. So I say, I'm going to change my topic. And basically, I just started looking for labs around the world, mainly in Europe, that make crazy things. And I met a super crazy guy it's called Peter Fraser, and he's my former postdoc PI. And I completely got in love with his work. I say, okay, no matter what, I'm going to go there. So I moved to Cambridge, and I spent my postdoc for 6 years. So, and then I was back 1 year ago to Spain to create my own group. So that's my own story. And on top of that, I have 2 maternity leave, and it's something that is important to say. So you can have also personal life on top of the science.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Martinez. I think then last but not least,
Okay.
Dr. Yasel Serabi.
Okay. So actually, I was also not interested in science as a kid at all. And I was really good at languages and not in the science subjects. And this is because I think teachers were very boring. So they could not grab my attention. I'm a person like very goal oriented. If I find a goal, I go after it and I focus and do my best. If there is no goal, then I would not put so much effort. So it's not like I'm a real nerd from early on. So this changed. And then in high school, I got to get so biology lessons and chemistry from better teachers who could get me really interested in the subject. But actually in the university, I got very interested because of watching the videos that really demonstrate the molecular mechanisms and the biology inside the cell. So I think this generation is really privileged because they could see stuff and imagine. If you don't have this, you don't get interested. And teachers have to to put much more effort into visualizing stuff, connecting it with reality. Otherwise, you could have a very good student that has a great potential, but it will never be unleashed. So, yeah. So it was later on, maybe not very early on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Serafi. Okay, I see a hand. That's good, because otherwise I'm going to ask the next question.
My name is Silvia. I'm working in WIPO. First of all, I would like to thank you all. I was particularly impressed by your passion, if I may say so, that resulted from all your introductions. You are passionate, not only scientists, but you're passionate. You can feel your passion about what you're doing. Now, I have a question. Maybe it's a particularly addressed to Professor from Argentina, Karen. Maybe it's an uneasy question, I may suspect. You mentioned social responsibility about your scientific activities. I heard, I can't remember from whom, the word big data. And we know nowadays this word may also provoke some uneasiness. And I heard personal genetic cures or treatments in the future. It is the future possibly of many diseases, to cure many diseases. So I'm connecting the three words: social responsibility, so by scientists, of course, big data, personal genetic treatments. I would like to know from you, how do you feel about this issue? How big data will be used collectively about each individual patient in the future, especially maybe also by the pharmaceutical companies that may, in the end, also benefit from this kind of researches. I hope I've made myself. So your position or your feelings, at least, if possible, about these issues that in the future will become more and more d'actualité.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, for your very important question. As every technological development, it has dual uses, potential dual uses. So big data, genetic manipulation, etc., can be used very much for the benefit of humanity, but it can also have other applications, as this is the history of science and technology. So this is why I emphasized the concept of a social responsibility of scientists, because I think part of the responsibility of how this is used relies on us, part of it, because it's not all. So I think it's very important also for us to be able to speak to decision makers, to politicians, institutions like WIPO. That's why I was making the question of how to try to improve the conditions on patent and how to bring a human aspect to this and a human responsibility towards environment, climate change, and everything. So this is one of this is a permanent question and a very, very relevant issue. So I invite my younger colleagues also to get involved into, without abandoning excellency in research, but also to get. It's very important that we bring knowledge to decision making. That from our point of view or our perspective, but also politicians and decision makers have to, and it's also their public responsibility to approach scientists, technologists, engineers to set their agenda and their policies. I'm just telling you the framework. I'm not answering the question because it's very difficult to go into details. I mean, it's a huge topic, but I think this is very, very important to deal with. It has to be dealt with. And UNESCO and the UN, I mean, they do have some instances where this is discussed, but I think much more has to come in. It also has to do with women in science. I mean, it's all this social aspect of science and technology.
The big data with genetics, now it's available online for everyone to access. Like you have data showing gene expression in different patients, in different types of cells, and this is very helpful for me, for example, who do not do the big data production, but rather I want to focus on a certain gene and check it in many patients. So this gives me the opportunity to just use the data that others have put as open access. So it's also like a kind of social responsibility that they share the data. They don't keep it for themselves. So this is from one aspect. I don't see very much negatives now because of this open data stuff, but you can always use data wrong, so I don't know. But for now, it's really helpful for others just to not replicate the same experiments others did, but rather start from where they have stopped.
I'm also using open data as a computational scientist, that we are developing tools and softwares to analyze the big data in health sciences. So we are also providing our codes in open access to academic users. I think that's also very important. When we say big data, we can imagine that it is hard to interpret this data, and our software is also contributing in that stuff that by integrating the data, you can have more understandable thing that will help especially in precision medicine, toward the patient-specific treatment strategies, I can say.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have a question from a colleague from CERN, please.
Hello, thank you all for the wonderful talks given until now. I work at CERN, the European Organization Performing Nuclear Research, which is a few kilometers for here, as I'm sure most of you are aware, in the Diversity Office. And I wanted to ask your perspective for the ones I would like to share with us. A few years ago, the UNESCO Science Report, published in 2015, shared with us some very interesting statistics on the participation of women in science, showing us that many of the women doing PhDs in fields of research, not only scientific fields, but for example social sciences, but in research, drop the work in research after their PhD. So for both Professor Hellberg, but also our international rising talents, I would like to ask what was the elements in your personal professional experience that encouraged you to continue your work in research, and that were particularly motivating for you to reach at the successful level you're at right now.
Do you have maternity places or kindergartens at CERN? Okay, I think this was pivotal it was fundamental for my research, in addition to my husband's support. I think both things are very important, but institutionally, I think the existence of child care centers, that was fundamental. As I said, I worked at the Atomic Energy Commission Research Lab in Bariloche. And there, 300 meters from my lab, there was a child care center. I have two children. The first one was born when I was beginning my PhD, and my daughter was born when I was finishing my PhD. So imagine both of them were born when really one is under a lot of stress and activity, and we all know the requirements of a PhD thesis. But both of them went back before 3 months, before they were 3 months old. And I really tell you, I think I wasn't a bad mother in the sense that it was very, very convenient for me, because I was at the lab and I breastfed them until they were 1 year old. It was very convenient. And also doing science gave me a certain amount of flexibility in my obligations, in my timetable. So And then to travel, which is very important because we have to collaborate, we have to travel abroad. Then I had my mother, my husband. So, I mean, family-wise, it's very important. And also, I mean, the institutions must have a child care center, which is close to their place. And the drop-offs, in many cases, it's personal, of course, because we all have struggles also during our career. And, I think society also has to be supportive of women in science. There has to be a cultural change. We are still strange figures, and we all had to challenge the system somehow. So that still costs a lot of energy. It's not something that is normal for us. And if we're all fighting until this changes, because it has to be a cultural change. And some cultures, of course, cultures are different. I suppose some countries are even more difficult, the Arabian countries, but there is a very strong cultural component.
I think also, in addition, there's also the limited number of research positions when we compare the number of PhD graduates and the academic positions afterwards. So, for example, one of my colleagues in US, she applied for maybe 20 positions, but at the end she came up with 0 offer, and then she switched to a company that she was able to both perform research at the same time she can do her work. So I think the number of academic positions and the number of PhD graduates also a problem in this sense.
Maybe so young female scientists don't have ideas, so women can become a scientist. So in my university, also degrees female scientists. So then now our university support young female researcher to continue their research. So to fund or children support, something like this.
Mm-hmm. So the importance of the universities to support women scientists at the entry level, perhaps.
Yes. As a scientific woman, I will speak about my personal experience. I encountered many problems, many obstacles. Why? Some problems was related to my project, which is neurodegenerative disease. It was very difficult to develop this project in Tunisia because I'm the only person who works on this disease and specifically on this aggregation on amyloid plaques. So I did a lot of collaboration in US, in Mitchell Center of Alzheimer's Disease in US, in Italy, in University of Florence, and in France, in University of Poitiers. So I was autonomous, and I had a lot of problems. So there are other problems related to the mentality of others. Especially the director of research and the director of my lab. He didn't want that I continue on this project. And also there are other obstacles like family responsibilities because my husband lives in Paris, I live in Tunisia. So it was very hard to pursue a scientific career. So I had a lot of problems during my research. After all these problems and obstacles, I think that networking, making collaborations with other laboratories, it's very, very, very important.
Right.
As a woman, you usually have a lot of social and cultural barriers because you are expected to get married and then have children. And when you decide to be in academia, then the questions are about how you're going to manage to be the cultural woman and then be the scientist. So having people who support you is very important. So just like I have a very supportive husband who allows me to dream and then do what I have to do to get ahead. I have a very supportive family. I have a very supportive mom. I have a mom who was a teacher. She's now retired, but her dream was to be a lawyer. But she was told that as a woman, you have to quickly get married. So she was made to move into teaching quickly because it was easier for her to be a wife and then a teacher. So she tends to be very, very supportive of my career. So whatever I want to do. And then also, very importantly, I've had strategic mentors and sponsors along the way who have more or less paved way for me in my career. So I don't know how. I've not actually gone out to actively seek for these mentors, but somehow I find them and they have helped me get there. So for instance, it wasn't very difficult for me to get a teaching position, an academic position, because my mentor was close to the HR boss. And so he put in a word for me, and then I was able to get the job. So I think support is very, very important.
So I think that there are quite a lot of barriers that we are suffering as a woman scientist, but I need to say that I was lucky, because if not, I won't be here. So I always had a really very supportive family who encouraged me to pursue the scientific career. And now, in order to fight against the pipeline leak that is just occurring around the 30s, that basically, as you can expect, is because the main factors here is the maternity. So here I have also a fantastic husband who decided to step back in his career to allow me to be here, right? To don't clip my wings. And it has been very important because, kids, and mainly when they are really very small, they need you. But you need to, you cannot be there. So somebody need to be a little bit more with them. So in this case, it was my husband. And so something that also helped me a lot, because as I said before, I'm lucky because I think that I have not such a big barriers to fight against. But of course that there is some limitation, and just the numbers speak by themselves. So around 29% of position of group leaders are just women. So basically we have a problem, and this is worldwide with different sources, but this is a problem. And for me, what helped a lot is different training. So I have been in different programs, specifically in 3. One of these is the one from the L'Oréal Unesco, but I also was in 2 other programs that encourage women. So they selected women postdocs with potential to jump into the next step, and they train us quite well, because there are some unconscious bias. These are there, right? And we cannot fight against it. Not now. In the decision-making process are mainly made by males. They are applying their criteria that I'm not saying that is better than or worse than the one from females, but are different. So somehow you need to know which is this bias and try to fight against. So it's not exactly that you need to be some kind of male to be there, but sometimes you need to know what they expected from you, and at least it helped me for me. So just a really very nice example, just the manner in which we present our work. So it has been proven that males, so for example, for a position, males trying to present the work more complicated, and for them, like things that are complicated, maybe not so clear, that's equal to high quality. In the case of females, it has been proven that we try to do something more clear, more structured, and for me, it's better, right? But if the people that are deciding if I'm gonna be this person to get this position are gonna be male, maybe they're gonna appreciate something more complicated. So it's gonna interpret it that's gonna be high quality, and this is something that happened. And if you know this, okay, I want to be myself, right? But maybe I'm gonna do something a little bit more complicated. That's it. These things help me.
Actually, so Professor Hellberg, she summarized it all, and she said like the partner, the family, and the maternity. Yes. So first of all, like growing up, I have never felt different from my brother. If I have a dream, I have the right to go after it exactly the same way my brother has this right. So this is very important from early on. And then having a supportive husband, of course, is crucial. Like if you pick the wrong husband, your career is ruined. Yeah, because we as researchers, you don't only have to do the research. You have to supervise students. You have to write grants. You have to reply to so many emails. You have to think of new ideas, and you have to teach. And this is so much. So you will definitely have to work a bit from home after you come back from work. And if your husband is not understanding, and many weekends you have to probably sit at home and just fill up grants or so. So if he's not understanding, if he doesn't understand your ambition or where you're heading to, then it's a big problem. And the third thing, of course, is like the maternity. So first, I'm having my first kid in a month, okay, so I don't know yet how it would look like, but I believe this is a very big factor, because when I was thinking now what I'm going to do, so I don't have a nursery in my institution, so this is really a big problem. So I decided for a nanny maybe that sits at home with the kids. So I believe every educational institute should have a very good nursery where the kids are well taken care of and you feel very safe. You can go and see them. And unfortunately, we have a rule in Egypt that in any workplace where there are more than 100 women, there should be a nursery, but it's not implemented yet. So I really hope that this gets implemented, because it would make life easier. And what's keeping me going more, or even I worked so much during my pregnancy, so much, like more than usual also, because I heard 2 comments from friends and colleagues, and they said like, oh my God, you're pregnant. This means your career is going to be ruined very soon. And 2 girls actually. So this gave me like more persistence to just, I'm healthy, I can do the job, my brain doesn't stop. It doesn't mean that, yes, pregnancy does not mean your brain is not functioning. So, yes.
Thank you so much. I think, Dr. Thank you so much. You've summarized it well, that the family support and also
partner support.
Yes, partner support, and also
yes.
maternity. Yeah. And also here the importance of support from the universities, for example, and institutions. And I'd like to echo in closing what Dr. Hellberg has said, that we need to change the culture. We have to have a culture change. And for that, I think all of us are in this together, and WIPO also is a partner, Unesco, University of Geneva, other partners. And we thank you, the scientists, for being here with us and being out there and finding solutions for the entire humankind. And I thank you all.
Thank you so much.